Today's demonstration is a pumpkin sausage with pasta recipe from Rachel Ray of Food TV Network. We do a couple modifications to make this a little bit more school cool by substituting some of the cooking wine with additional broth, and we'll come to that later in the recipe. But I'm going to start with a rundown of the ingredients being used today, show you one particular technique before we start cooking. Alright, we are going to be using a pound of Italian sausage. This is store-bought just to make things quicker for us, but we'll be grinding and seasoning our own in class. We have some onions and garlic to saute off. This is 3/4 a cup of onion, the equivalent of 1 medium onion, 4 cloves of garlic, 2 cups of broth, not all added at once. Again, 1 cup of this would have been wine, and we'll talk about our modification when we get there. 1 cup of pumpkin puree. This is our sugar pie pumpkins that we've been roasting in class and scooping out the flesh, going to give this a really good flavor. Some of our spices, herbs, aromatics include a bay leaf and then also some sage. I wanted to show, to make sure we know how to cut this, that we're going to have like 6 to 8 leaves of sage cut on the chiffonade, so stack those up on top of themselves, cut them in super thin strips, and I'll add these into the others that are already done. So we want these to be super thin so we get maximum flavor out of those, and not huge chunks. A tablespoon of salt is actually going to go into the pasta water that has already been started. It takes a long time for that amount of water to come to a boil. We'll come to that later on. Our spices, 1/8 teaspoon of cinnamon, which is a 1/4 teaspoon filled only halfway, and a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. So these are some spices that kind of make one think of fall and winter time. And then we finish this off later on with 1/2 cup of cream, or 1/2 and 1/2. Really adds a richness to the sauce. Alright, the recipe says that the first part of the cooking part of this is the browning off or cooking of sausage. So we're going to be transitioning to the stove, and we'll pick it up there. This is our all-clad saucepan that will hold the sauce pretty well, with the sides being that they are. Should be big enough also to add our pasta in at the end. Great idea to get your pasta cooked as fresh as you can. Take it straight out of the boiling water, shake off the excess water, add it into your sauce so that the starch in the pasta can help thicken the sauce. So we will come to the pasta later on, but again, we do already have the water boiling. So into this pan, a tablespoon of oil, olive oil or olive oil and canola mix, and 1 pound of sausage that's going to be cooked off to crumble. So be mindful of whatever it is that the sausage was in. It needs to be washed properly and sanitized as necessary, or sent through our commercial dishwasher. And also, once we're cooking this off to the side, we do want to make sure that we have a plate for the sausage when it's done browning, so it can drain. And we're back in real time. The whole amount of time for cooking off the sausage is probably 5 to 6 minutes. Want to do that on medium to medium high, making sure that we don't burn the sausage, end up with bad flavor. But we need something to scoop this out. As we said, have a plate lined with paper towels. You do want to have something slotted though to get most of the grease staying in the pan. Now this is going to be hard to tell with the thermometer as far as the sausage being cooked all the way through to 155 is the proper temp. So you really have to go by color. The fact that we don't have any pink left. The time lapse maybe didn't show, but I was breaking up the chunks of sausage as it was cooking. And though I don't want this to be undercooked, I do know that later on in the process there's going to be more cooking time for this as it gets heated through. Alright, back to our pan. This is the amount of oil that is left, or grease more from the sausage itself. Pour that off and add that into a metal bowl. And we can put this heat back on because it's time to cook off our vegetables, the onion and the garlic. The pan itself does have a little bit of slightly browned meat. That is fine. It's actually got extra flavor. It's not black, it's just brown. That will come off later on with the addition of the wine if you're using that, or the chicken broth, kind of deglazing the pan. So we want to keep the heat going with this pan. So we're going to go ahead and get that oil back in. As you've talked about before in class, sauteing principles. You want the onions to always get a head start before the garlic so it doesn't burn. And the spoon that was being used for the meat could be used also for the onion. It's not a cross-contamination risk since the sausage has been cooked. We're kind of getting a little bit of color on that. You can already see that some of the liquid from the onion is helping the stuff in the bottom of the pan to loosen. This gets a head start, maybe 30 seconds or so, and then we can follow that with the garlic. And we want that to get sauteed and get a little color. The next addition of ingredients is going to be the bay leaf and the sage, and then to that we'll be adding in a cup of broth. So this bay leaf will be easy to find later on to pull it out. Get a little bit of heat and color on the sage. You can smell the sage aroma immediately once it hit the pan. And it is now at this time that we're going to be adding a cup of broth. A quick point about this: if this were wine, that would be something that would evaporate at about 170 Fahrenheit, so it would reduce down by half much quicker than the broth is going to. The broth is made with water, so that's going to boil at 212. So this will take quite a bit more time. We do want to reduce it down so we don't have a soupy sauce. Okay, so we'll be finishing that off camera. The thing we want to draw your attention though to before we move on to the next stage is our pasta water. Okay, we're starting with just about a gallon of water, and to that we put a tablespoon of salt. Water maxes out at 212 Fahrenheit boiling. The addition of that amount of salt might raise the boiling point 1 degrees Fahrenheit. We do not put salt in pasta water to make the water hotter to boil pasta faster, but we add that tablespoon of salt to get the salinity close to ocean water to get the maximum flavor into the pasta. Now these are penne noodle. They're round. They do have ridges on it, which is great for holding on to the sauce. The water was boiling, so we will go ahead and add in just under a pound, about 14 ounces of noodles, just to make sure that we don't have more pasta than we have sauce for. And we're back in real time. This has been boiling for probably a good 5 minutes, trying to get it to reduce down by half and kind of puddling it up in the side. You can kind of estimate that's about half a cup of liquid left. May not have shown on time lapse, but scraping on the bottom to get all those loosen, or to help loosen all the brown pieces of sausage. All right, next thing, the meat goes in. The additional cup of broth. And we are using caldo powder to make things easier for us, so if there's any in the bottom. And the cup of pumpkin. Break up the pumpkin. This all needs to come to a boil. Okay, so we'll be doing that in time lapse. We definitely do not add the cream in at this point. If we were working with wine, that acid would not react well with the cream. It would help it curdle. And if we had the cream in here for too long on high heat, it would also curdle. So the cream is going to be added at the end, after this has come back to a boil, to be cooked all the way through, right as the finishing touch, along with our cinnamon and nutmeg. All right, we will finish this in time lapse. And we are back in real time. This has definitely come back to a boil. I may not have shown in time lapse, but I was making sure to break up the chunks of pumpkin. Definitely any sausage that might not have been cooked all the way through will be cooked all the way through after it's been sitting in here and simmering for a while. Again, now we're going to add our half a cup of dairy, be it half and half or even richer with cream. And then our cinnamon and nutmeg sprinkled throughout. Make sure those are mixed in. And this will finish this off. You can add salt and pepper to taste. This is going to be really hot right now to taste. Kind of have to see how things go with the salt level of the pasta. Serve this with Parma cheese that has salt in itself. So tend to do some seasoning later on. You're going to eventually want to get this bay leaf out of here. It's not a prize if it ends up on someone's plate. So if you see it on top, you can go ahead and get that done. All right, pasta is not done. It's getting close. It's been just about 8 minutes. So I can let the sauce hang out on low. We can now focus ourselves on pasta. Pasta is done when it's done. There's no truth to the belief of throwing it up against the wall and seeing if it sticks. If it does, that's just a nice coincidence. It really has to do with whether or not it's been cooked all the way through. So we take out one, it's 8 minutes in, and you can kind of pinch it between your fingers. I can tell that this is not done, and a bite tells me the same. So we want something that's called al dente, to the tooth. So something that's a little bit softer than what I have. I'm probably going to have to give it 2 more minutes. The key to cooking pasta properly is to have ample water. So this is a little bit under a pound, but we definitely want like a gallon of water for every pound of pasta, especially this dried pasta, which has a lot of starch in it. The fresh pasta that we make will be done much, much sooner than this. And when we're done, we just drain this off and add this pasta into our sauce and coat it. I want to do everything we can to not throw out this water until we're absolutely sure that we're happy with our dish, because if our sauce is too thick and we need to add some liquid in, this starchy, salty water would be a great source for adding some liquid in. We did add salt into this water, definitely no oil. The key to not getting my noodles to stick together doesn't have to do with oil in the water, which will not let sauce stick to the pasta, but having lots of water. And then even though I was making the sauce with the camera, off camera, I was stirring this pasta up from time to time. Alright, we'll finish this later. Now it has been 10.5 minutes, so a little bit longer in the water. You can see how the pasta is doing now. Take this out. You can tell by the pinch that separates more easily. The chew a little bit more forgiving. So I'd say that this is done. It's time to take the pasta out. If your pasta is done early, which very well can happen, and your sauce isn't done, you can drain this and let this colander kind of hang out, as so. And then if it gets too cooled down, you would just dunk it one more time to kind of revive the noodles. But our pasta sauce is done, our noodles are done, so we're going to pivot camera this way, and we'll actually look to take the pasta, shake all the water out that we can, pour that in the sauce. We turn our water down for the steam, but now it's time to stir this through. This is still simmering, stay on low. Now it is. There's our bay leaf. I'll be taking that out. Coat this up entirely. Get everything thickened through. And be able to plate this up and eat. That is our finished dish. If you stir carefully, it will all fit in here. If you don't trust yourself, you could have transferred the pasta to a bowl and poured the sauce over the top.